Hi, everyone. This is Ronnie with Everything Virtual. Today, we have a couple of very special guests with us. We have the Pardo brothers, Jonathan and Steve Pardo are with us, as well as Damon. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
No, really appreciate it. And I know, Damon was the one that made the introduction. I know that I think he ran into Steve at a VR after party at GDC a couple years ago. I don't know if you guys want to talk about what you were doing there, because I know you were. I know what you were showing off was pretty eye catching. So, and I know that's how kind of Damon ran into you. But
it's a good question. What were you doing there?
What were you doing? I didn't know what I was doing there.
Yeah, it was sort of leading. Our project was actually leading up to that point. That was sort of like, okay, we're gonna reveal it and see what the world thinks about it, and as almost like a dare to ourselves, like we're gonna make this ridiculous saxophone game and then show it at maybe the most interesting VR mixer at GDC. Let's see, alongside Google and Vive and anyway. But yeah, so we got a cool booth at a good spot, got a lot of traffic. This is at the 2019 GDC VR mixer. I can't remember the name of the club, but it was a pretty nice space, a really nice space. And yeah, we got a great spot, got a lot of traffic, a lot of noteworthy people playing our game, and to the delight of me, and then relaying that information to my brother. A lot of great feedback, and most people were really enjoying and having a ball with it. So it was really reaffirming, and at the time, me and my brother were kind of like, this just might be all we do, right? Like, just show it off at this mixer and have a good time and put it up on Twitter. But it ended up being like, oh, okay, so we should make this saxophone game. We should really.
So for people out there that aren't familiar with your backgrounds, you guys have backgrounds in music, in the gaming space, as well as VR. So if you could kind of talk a little bit about how you started out with all of those kind of, seemingly disparate interests, and somehow found a way to meld them all together.
Yeah, it's both Steve and I have backgrounds in music. That's where we got our start. Steve, I mean, when he was a kid, he would always say that he's going to be making music for video games. So he has accomplished his goal. I think I wanted to be a jazz singer doing scat in some crappy club. I didn't accomplish that goal, but I think that we're in a better place than I would have been scatting. But yeah, we both went to music school. Steve was at University of Miami. I was at Berkeley. And I got a job at this video game company, Harmonix Music. They make Rockband, Dance Central, a bunch of other good games. And so when I started there, dropped out of college as a good Berkeley student does, and stuck with it and made a whole career in game development, was there for over 9 years. And got Steve a job there within the first year that I was there. So he and I were making games together there, and have been ever since. That was 2009.
Okay.
So yeah, tons of games in that time, tons of fun experiences, figuring out how to be a game developer and making it a career for both of us. I was mostly in the QA world, QA lead on games like Rockband VR and other Rock Band titles, Beatniks, which I was QA lead and audio lead, which is a funny music pet game where everything is about music, but you're making this little monster creature. So yeah, that for my background, it was, lots of good experiences being I was a lead, a product owner on Fantasia, which was an amazing Connect game, which everybody remembers the long-lived use of Connect.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember when the game was launched, and that's part of the thing that's kind of a little bit difficult about some of those games. When you use the peripherals, it's like when the peripherals are still alive and kicking, it's easy to jump in. But like you have to find those things nowadays in order to experience the game. So
yeah, it is one of, I mean, Kinect is like, you can see what people were trying to do. It's like the pre-VR experience of you are the controller. And we always made fun of it, but it was like, it was pretty unique in how successful it was and making you feel like you were controlling a world. And, you know, I think the more we've looked back at Fantasia, we kind of wish we could just like do something like that again, but in VR. So Steve and I, you know, we've done a lot of really unique music experiences over time, and a few on the side as well for ourselves. And so the first venture that we did to get out of AAA world and make something on our own a little bit indie was this title called Circle. It's kind of a meditative music experience that you get to interact with shapes and different portals that you can enter, and it's really this fun and calming music experience where you get to create the soundtrack and the visuals are around you changing with it. And then a lot of people, when they're playing it, they just stop the interaction and just sit in what they get to that they've made up until that point. So those are the kind of things that we started with when we wanted to say, okay, what do we want to make by ourselves? And we demoed that a lot and had some really good feedback on it. And then Steve and I had this idea for a saxophone VR game. And we were like, that beautiful meditative experience is great, but let's pause on that and make saxophone. And we had a legit conversation one day in the park eating lunch where we made that decision that saxophone's where the money is. And ever since then, we've been hyper-focused on making saxophone a reality.
Well, and I could tell just from like looking at Steve's, like I added you both to Twitter before, you know, jumping onto the call, and I noticed saxophones are a prevalent theme on a lot of your social media presence. So,
our branding is really strong. Saxophone paraphernalia.
So what was it about saxophones in particular that kind of jumped out at you as something that could potentially work in VR?
Yeah, I think that, like, I mean, I'll let Jonathan sort of answer the fun part of that question, but as far as like our interest in saxophone in particular, I started playing saxophone as a, you know, 5th grader and took it really, really, really seriously, went to school for it. That was what I got my undergraduate degree in. But Jonathan was an excellent saxophone player too, all throughout grade school and high school. He won the Louis Armstrong Award.
Miss Delaney said I was even better than Steve was in 8th grade. So that's why my Twitter handle's First Chair Sax.
He knows. We both know. But you know, I still play saxophone, right, professionally, and one of the reasons I moved to Nashville is because I wanted to engage with it and at like, you know, more like live concert kind of way and playing in sessions, which is something that I sort of put on ice while I was living in Boston. And then COVID happened, right? So now I don't get to do any more live performances. But yeah, like when Jonathan had this idea for the saxophone interaction, and I'll hand over the mic to saxophone because it blew me away, and I was like, we have to make this.
Yeah, it was. So I was holding the Oculus Touch controllers in my hand, and there was one moment where I was using the triggers, and I just kind of took a second and looked at it and went like this, and I was just like, this is how you play saxophone. You use these fingers in this exact same orientation, and if all I do is hold it like this, I am playing saxophone. And for anybody else that would have been like, oh, that's a dumb thing. For me, it was like, this is amazing. I'm going to go tell Steve about it. And Steve, to his credit, was more amazed about it than I was. He was like, whatever this is, we're making this. And so we both agreed that we were making a saxophone game. And from that point on, it was like figuring out what it was. It started as just this, okay, it's going to be goofy. It's going to be fun. Everybody knows saxophone is just a funny instrument. Like, I think that like culturally, we all agree saxophone is funny and it's serious and it's beautiful, but it's funny.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you have like John Coltrane at the one end of the spectrum, like the most sincere, serious, spiritual musician of all time, you know, subjectively speaking, of course. And then you have like, David Sanborn, Kenny G,
Sure.
what's his name? The SNL character,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just like 80s like silliness. So the fact you have so much room, like mood and vibe to play with.
And
so much character.
And I feel like there's a lot of showmanship too, just in terms of what you're able to do while expressing yourself on a saxophone. That seems like it'd be a lot of fun.
When I remember walking up to at the mixer, and I don't remember the name of the club either, but at the mixer for GDC, the big thing is everyone there was very serious, and I know it's a serious thing. Like you have what you've been working on. Everyone there is trying to pitch to every person that walks in there. Oh, this is it. This is the next piece of hardware. This is the next VR game. And then Steve is there, and he's absolutely not serious. He's like this. The first thing he did when I walked up, he was like, "This is a joke. This is just a goof. This means nothing."
That's why Steve's the head of marketing.
Nothing. And I was like, and we had spent days at this point going up to every booth, and everything is very serious, and everyone's very solemn, and just like, we've been spending 4 or 5 years on this thing, and we don't know what's gonna. But here, play it, try our thing, which we're happy to do. But after a long day and about 4 or 5 drinks that were free, he comes up and he's like, "Just try this out." And I was just like, "This is great. This is amazing." And like we were saying with the controls, it was so genius. I couldn't believe it was the most original control scheme I'd ever seen used for the touch controllers, because it was, and I don't play saxophone. I saw it when I was in band, but like I've never played, but it was just so, and it's only what's funny is you had the CV1 Rift, and it was just like, it was almost kind of made for it.
Yeah.
And it made sense. And you even had it to where if you let off on fingers that are higher, then it makes like a funny sound, which I guess that's like a real saxophone, right?
We are trying to guide you towards playing the saxophone in a very authentic way. So
that's what I was curious, because I unfortunately I didn't get a chance to play it there. I had to leave before, like literally as he was playing it is when I think I was on my way out. And I remember like that night later leaving and talking to and Damon just couldn't stop talking about how fun it was.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like, so it was definitely out of a lot of the things that were kind of a blur, like from GDC week and just trying so many different things, like right away when he reminded me that, oh, hey, like Steve Pardo, he's the guy that had the saxophone demo at GDC. Like it immediately like, oh yeah, I totally, like, even though I hadn't had a chance to play it, it was such a unique thing that like I remembered it instantly from when he was describing it. And
best swag award ever for any.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, best swag ever.
What was it?
Kazoos, right?
Yeah.
I was like little saxophone kazoos.
Kazoo just said saxophone. It was like
I demoed it a few months later at PAX East, and following Steve's lead, I brought a bunch of like inflatable saxophones, and they were also a hit of that party. But I think what you're saying about this being unique is like the only reason we think it's unique is because the baseline of where this came from was Steve and I are both saxophone players. This feels like a saxophone interaction. And from there, it's just like, you just got to make it fun. So the work was done for us. Like the way that the controllers have been designed did the work for us to make this like feel like you're actually playing saxophone. And I think that's one of the hard things with VR is, you have this idea of how you're going to create a world, and then from there, how do you interact with it? And that's, since the early days of VR, it's always been like, how do you interact with things? How do you, whether it's, how do you move around the space? How do you grab things? What's the UI like? Like for us, it was like, this game already exists. The gameplay of I input in this way and it makes sense to me and it feels like I'm actually doing it. That was like so easy to accomplish that the rest of it has been so much fun for us to like figure out, like things like narrative and things like world building and
gameplay.
Which do exist, gameplay.
Yeah.
Those are all just like additional things to make it feel full and rich. And it's been fun for us to figure out, okay, this started as this goofy thing that we thought maybe one or two people would like, and we've demoed it a few times, and we've gotten some real appreciation for it as if it's a real thing. So we've kind of pivoted from like Steve's initial pitch, which was completely legitimate, of this is a joke, stop taking it seriously, to like, this could be something that people enjoy, people that aren't saxophone players. And that's what we thought, is like, this is a game for us. This is a game for saxophone players that are in the VR world, probably a pretty niche market. But we've been able to discover just like any other music experience, everybody resonates with music. And so what we've been able to do is, okay, let's make what saxophone is in music the thing. So saxophone in pop music. So let's like make a ripoff to Careless Whisper, and that's one of the songs in one of the worlds. Bebop, like let's make a small club that you're playing into a bunch of bebop jazz fans. Free jazz, which most people hate. Let's make it. Let's give you that experience of what it feels like to play in a free jazz club with 3 people in the audience.
I want to put in a request. John Cusack in Better Off Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
done.
It's guilty pleasure. Guilty
I'm
pleasure.
into it.
Guilty pleasure, but
I'm
I mean, that's
into
a
it.
great sex.
Quick question,
Great
like
movie sex moment.
something that kind of jumped at me when you're discussing kind of how you came up with how you had to try to find gameplay ideas and narrative to go along with the experience of playing the saxophone. Generally speaking, this is probably like a problem that you have to deal with in all rhythm and music games just across the board. But I was kind of curious what you guys have figured out as far as like how to meld kind of the free like ad lib kind of nature of of playing a saxophone in VR in particular. And I know Rockband VR kind of experimented with that a little bit more than some of the traditional console music rhythm games. But yeah, just kind of curious how you kind of see the rhythm games kind of moving more to like user control and that sort of thing.
I'll definitely say that like that problem hasn't been solved by any stretch of the imagination. It's an incredibly hard game design problem, like leaving creativity up, like making a creative interaction that therefore has to be judged by the rules of a game with rigidity.
Yeah.
I would say, at Harmonix, we certainly have tried it. There are others that have tried it. It's like to varying degrees of success, and some more than others. But I think with saxophone in particular, we definitely see it as so. Saxophone in of itself has become sort of an on rails comedy experience where you're sort of
nice.
We're sort of like feeding you this story, and there is gameplay in there, and there is like interaction and creativity, like for sure. All of that is there. Yeah. But the main guiding force with saxophone is the story, leading you now through these different experiences. That sort of, just like touching all the things that Jonathan was saying, all the things we think is funny and hilarious and sincerely cool about saxophone. Like, so the gameplay is there, and it serves a purpose in the story.
Sure.
Which I won't get into too deeply, but like, because we don't want spoilers here.
Yeah.
So, but like the gameplay tries to leave the creativity alone, and just asks you, hey, do this thing in a funny way. And if you do that, what I mean?
That sounds like a really cool approach, particularly in VR, because I feel like VR gives you the opportunity to kind of be in like the shoes of the performer in a way that's different from like a traditional console. Like with a normal console rhythm game type experience, I'd say it's probably more like the player with the music and the instrument. That's kind of the interaction. Whereas in VR, you also get to be in that space and in that world a little bit more. So I kind of like, I think that's a really smart approach.
Yeah, I think that one thing that Steve and I wanted the gameplay to do is to reinforce how you use the instrument.
Right.
Like, because it is like on the baseline, like we've said, like there's these triggers on the back, and that's the way that you interact with it, much like a saxophone. But we've expanded on that in ways that you can add vibrato by shaking it, and you can scoop with your right joystick to scoop up into the note. And all of those things, when you know how to do them, make it feel like you're really controlling the instruments, and you can really get into the music that you're playing. And so for somebody like Steve, who built this thing, he can legitimately play an amazing saxophone solo. And you can just stand back in amazement. And then if you hand it to a novice, obviously they're not going to be able to do that. So the gameplay is trying to train you how to play the instrument over time in a very passive way that, like Steve said, is actually included into the narrative in a really funny and bizarre way.
Have you thought of putting anything in the game that could, like, for people that might be interested in learning a little bit more of those nuances to kind of at least get a feel for it? Or
I think that's what Jonathan what he was starting to say. Like the game starts where we're reinforcing some very fundamental things that you know, like play slow or fast, or play high or play low, and then as you go, like the second level, it's asking you a few other expressive things, and then by the third level, it's like asking you some fairly difficult I mean, again, like what we're not doing, and what we never sought out to do, is have it be like a beat match, or like a rhythm game kind of thing. Like there are other games doing that, and all the credit to them, but like we didn't feel like trying to force the player to play licks, or to, because like we don't want people to think like, I don't know how to play saxophone, I'm gonna fail at this game. But we wanted people but we wanted people who sort of were interested in learning the saxophone to have the freedom to like go there. And like,
that sounds super exciting. It's
a lot more accessible. It's a lot more accessible, because I'm like, I just want to look cool, I want to hold it, I want to feel like I'm in the 80s, or I just want to look cool, and I want to make music and whatever.
Just like the classic thing that kids say, I want to look cool. Hand me a saxophone. Where's the saxophone? I want to look cool.
Give me a virtual saxophone. I want to look cool.
Yeah, in VR.
Give me a saxophone no one can see. I want to look cool.
No one can see while I
Hey, not to mention adding the headset to it. Just make
a headset.
Doing this. It's like you're wearing sunglasses. That's cool. Like the biggest, dorkiest sunglasses.
Like what you said though, and it made me sound a little bit like it's not. I'm okay with games not being easy. Like it seems like now, and maybe you guys can talk about this. It seems like there's a lot of hand holding in games now, and if a game's $60, they're going to be like, "Oh, you're going to finish it. You put in the 22 hours." You'll get to the end and you'll die maybe once or none.
Sure.
But the skill level, like I'm okay with games now having more of a skill level.
Right.
It's VR games. They're a lot of them, you know, you're doing them in shorter sessions, but it's okay if it's harder. I think that's an okay thing.
Well, and depending again, like what we're trying to do right now at this stage in development, we are at like we want to prepare for a release, so that people can actually get their hands on this thing, and double down, reinforce the things that we're assuming people are enjoying about this game, and then from there take it to, you know, a full game experience. But right now we're just trying to release something that's like small, tight, executes on all these things we're talking about, and like get people, you know, having fun with saxophone and generating content, or just, you know, having fun or asking us to make more, you know.
I mean, what
platform are we talking about? Is it only Quest currently that you're going towards? Was that a pivot from before?
Rift, yes.
Rift,
Quest. We're 90% of the way there. Just technicalities we have to work out.
Sure.
Vive, we have not been planning on shipping on Vive, and we probably won't do that. We probably won't ship the demo on the Vive, and then we'll just see what happens after that.
How would that work?
I was curious.
Here, give me 2 seconds. Let me just 2 seconds
on the Vive.
He's probably going to go grab some controllers. Yeah, just curious, like how you would. Yeah.
How do we with the Vive wands? Is it even possible?
That's why we're sort of like.
So there is that side button on the Vive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we actually have looked at it and thought about it, and it totally is possible. I think it's like a very similar. It's not. I mean, the nice thing about the touch controller is they're both triggers. And so they both feel like valves on a saxophone, which the feel of the valve is what you really want when you're playing this game. But that doesn't mean that we couldn't port it to the valve. It definitely is.
Okay, and the last question, index. Does an index controller allow you?
I'll field that one.
Okay.
Oh, you mean, are you talking about like, so you get the
well, they got knuckles. Will a knuckles?
Yeah.
Here again.
The knuckles controller with the.
These are
because the grip is more. It's your actual grip that.
Yeah, like.
Sorry, that's a shitty controller, but.
I think that you can for sure do it, but again, like the tactile feeling of the two buttons.
Yeah, that was the big
on
deal.
both. It's like okay. Again, like there was an initial hesitation when Jonathan brought up the idea of the touch controllers as a saxophone, because it's like, well, they only have two, and I don't know for any of you woodwind players out there, there is 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And there's all these things with your pinky. And me being the saxophone purist, I'm just like, I don't know. But then I realized, well, we sort of realized, like, oh, a pentatonic scale. That's all you need. Like, and you can do an F sharp minor pentatonic scale with, two triggers on two hands, which for most people is going to be what they want, because you can play any note on a pentatonic scale as long as the songs harmonically line up, which we can do that. We can write our own songs. That's all people are going to need to make expressive sounding music out of a saxophone. I mean, of course, the saxophone VR subreddit community is pissed at us for not adding a third touch button.
It's a dumpster fire of just hate and vitriol.
Yeah.
I will say that we are shipping with a pro mode, so we'll see about that.
You guys aren't developing your own saxophone VR controller? Like, that's not something that's on the.
Don't think I haven't thought about it, Ronnie.
Quest does have that finger tracking thing,
Yeah.
If you can figure out where your fingers are at. I had one other really big thing I was thinking about, and maybe it just left me because I laughed
laughed it out.
But is it as far as songs go? Is the songs? I don't want you to give anything away, but is there? I know you said you have certain moods, certain things you want to hit. Is it going in and making a song that kind of sounds just like the song you want? I'm sure it's not licensed music, but we want to have an 80s saxophone riff. So This is a song that has kind of an 80s feel. The environment makes me feel like I'm in the 80s or 90s or current day or R&B or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, we can tease the storyline a little bit. The original plot actually is that you start at the top. You're the top of your game. And what that top of the game is a huge club with a big rock pop band playing Careful Wishbird, which is the Careless Whisper ripoff. From there's motivation. If you're going to get better, what you need to do is go back to the roots of saxophone. You need to play jazz. You need to play bebop. You need to play free jazz. And you need to go lower and lower and lower. And that's really what we've called it, is like the very common music game narrative is a rise to fame, and we've called it the fall to fame. Like, you already are at the top, but you don't know how to play saxophone, like really play saxophone. So the idea is like the music actually gets more and more complex as you go through the game. Of course, the clubs that you're playing at are getting smaller and smaller and smaller because nobody cares about free jazz. So like the fact that you can play it, sure, extremely impressive, but nobody wants to listen to it. So, that's kind of where we started. And from there, there's a funny, just dark subplot that we've been inspired by, like, the David O'Reillys of the world that can kind of balance funny and scary and bizarre and sweet and heartfelt. And so we try to like do that throughout this game in really quirky ways that I won't give away, but it does influence the music choices that we have for each level as well.
I'm in my head, I'm thinking you win the game, the camera flips around, there's one person in the club.
You're not that
And you're
far.
like,
You're not very far.
I did it. I got it.
I did it. I'm at the bottom.
That's awesome. So I know you guys have kind of expanded the scope of what you were intending from the beginning. Are you starting to see kind of a finish line as far as when you think this might be ready, or at this point you're still not 100% sure?
We initially planned on summer 2019, so I think we're late. But I
We're
think
still
that
second to that though.
yeah, we're still. We after again, like after the couple of mixers and experiments that we sort of lobbied at the world with the saxophone, and the seemingly amount of success, we decided to sort of to continue working on something that we weren't like we didn't see it as a like the initial release isn't going to be like a joke. It's going to be like this is a sincere, we care about this thing
for sure.
We work. Okay, so we have a couple friends who maybe you guys know. You guys familiar with the company Drool? They make like Thumper.
I'm familiar with Thumper, but I haven't spoken with the devs before.
Okay, yeah, we're fairly close with them.
Okay,
and their sort of like methodology was just like, keep working on it as long as you can, and release it when you're ready, and don't feel any pressure. And I think because me and Jonathan, which is so funny to say this, we care a lot about this thing. Yeah, we're sort of taking that approach with this, and we're working like weekly on this thing and adding new features all the time, and we're kind of just leveling up what it currently is as we go. And we've gotten to a point where we technically could release it, but I think we would just want to wait until like so right now we're definitely at that place where we're working on visual fidelity. Sure. And refining gameplay and bugs. Okay. But we're still I still don't feel great, and I think Jonathan would agree about like trying to set like a date. Sure. It's it might be this year. I hope it's this year, but it could be next year. Sure.
We're trying to get it out as soon as possible. Hopefully by end of year, I think is a legitimate and reasonable goal for us at this point.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm excited to play it from just hearing how you guys are describing it. Like, it definitely sounds, for me, one of the coolest parts of VR is that you do get to try so many different types of things. Like, it's not really just, there's no one traditional VR game, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, it really lets you be and try all kinds of different things. Yep. And I have not played anything that sounds remotely like this before. So like in a really like cool way. Like, I'm really genuinely excited to play it. So.
I think VR players we're kind of like a lot more open. I think the general VR community is just a lot more open because in 2016, 2017, tons of wild stuff came out. Yeah. And so everybody was like, well, if you want to play something, you got to try this stuff out. Mm-hmm. and just kind of put aside the old genres and like the stereotypical games that always had to fit in a certain space and go. And VR is just like, no, whatever you want it to be. There's no rule.
It feels like the VR landscape has changed from, okay, you're making a standard game and now it's in VR, which then you have like all of these design hurdles ahead of you to try to port something that is a standard console game to a VR experience. And the rules are just so different that you just can't start there. You really have to start with what is something that would feel good in VR. And for us, being on a stage, holding an instrument that maps extremely well to the controllers you're using is kind of a no-brainer. And so very quickly, I mean, the first day that Steve and I worked on this, within 6 hours, maybe, we had a prototype that was actually playable on a fake 360 picture that I found of concert hall. And it was fun. And it was like, we were amazed that how quickly we were able to make something go from non-existent to fun. So from there, it's just been like even more fun for us to figure out, okay, how else can we interact with this world? How else can we gamify this experience without affecting the experience too much? We don't want to distract from what at the core is just a really unique tool. That's that's, if you added too many layers, you could obstruct that and lose the sense of fun that's in playing an instrument. So we've been able to make a lot of unique decisions that are VR friendly to give this a real good life.
Is this a release for Oculus? Is this targeted to be an Oculus release, like on the Oculus storefront?
It'll be there.
Yeah. That's our goal.
I mean, not that we have any established like partnerships yet.
Sure.
It's just like that's been our going plan.
No, and like you guys were saying, I mean, I feel like the buttons on the touch controllers in particular really do have that kind of Valve feel to them, like in terms of how they kind of hinge a little bit. So it's really perfect for that, and it's nice that they've, like, despite the fact that there have been some hardware changes from what sounds like when you started the project versus where we are now, that those things have still stayed true on all the Oculus platforms. So
yeah, I don't remember when it was maybe a couple of years ago, where they said like the touch controller is like our plan for a while, there might be other technology that comes in and out, but like we feel like this is the medium at which we can really make a lot of experiences just with these touch controllers, which is gave us a lot of, all right, good.
Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, talking to you guys too, it makes me realize sometimes, I mean, there's a nice abstractness to having the button placement versus just I love my Valve Index controllers, but because of how specific that input is, sometimes it's nicer to just have buttons that you can just kind of map to different things, and it gives people more flexibility to experiment. So, I mean, that's one thing that I really love about the touch controllers. So.
And just 4 years ago, like if you tried to decide one thing or another, 80%, 50% of your market was just like gone. Now that there's so many Quests out there, now that there's so many Rift Ests, it's like you can make these decisions now, and it won't kill your potential marketplace. There's still just ridiculous amounts of people that have the Quest, that have the Rift S, that have the CV1, that are installed. So it's, I think it's a lot, it's less risky.
Yeah, and again, like we're not really at the point where we care so much about like mass market, like in like sheer number of people. It's just like, are the people that are playing it enjoying it?
Yeah.
And is this something that human beings want out of their VR kit? And if so, if it's working, then we can take it to the next level. Heck, we can talk about Vive. You know what I mean? It's like then we can start going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And the other, this is just sort of long big picture chat now. Like this is the tip of the iceberg of what me and Jonathan are excited about making. So if this gets proven that it answers not just what saxophone could be, but what we're hoping to do for the foreseeable future could be, like the next big thing. So it's like a lot is riding on this. This little joke game.
Come on, saxophone.
Yeah. Are there different saxophones in the game? What the one you held up? What kind of saxophone is that?
It's an alto.
Alto sax.
We went the David Sanborn route, Phil Woods,
Classic.
Charlie Parker, Ornette Coleman route. Yep.
So is there more than do you have a what is it, all the different, there's so many different, you have probably 12 saxophones that you own of all different kinds.
It's it's just a content thing, so like we could very easily make more, but like if that doesn't fit within our like just vision of what this needs to be on the outset, but like for sure, like there's no reason we couldn't have a flute, clarinet, tenor, barry, saxophone, whatever. That's
all different kinds. I wanted to pivot just a tiny bit because I know we've narrowly focused on saxophone and how you guys have gotten involved in that project in particular. I'm just kind of curious because I know when you guys were at other studios, you had specific kind of niche roles in those larger companies. Now that you guys have been on your own developing a game, it sounds like mostly between both of you, or are there other? How many members of the team are there? Do you know? Could you?
So it's the two of us right now, and we have reached out to a few folks to support us in the past, engineers, artists, etc. And we're definitely going to need to expand to make this finished product. So we're already kind of assessing what kind of a team makeup we would want to support us there. I mean, to Steve's credit, as an audio-focused human being, he's coded and engineered basically the entire game. And
Wow.
he and I have been splitting the duties of making everything. So designing and creating the content. The saxophone that you are playing, the actual samples, that's Steve. So, we've taken on a huge amount of work for ourselves. And I think right now we're at that point where we're saying, okay, how do we need to grow?
Yep.
Okay.
What team members do we need to add? Because if we really want to make it a polished experience, we're going to have to bring in other folks. Neither of us are even close to an artist. So that's probably the place that we need the most. So any artists out there that want to contribute to the greatest saxophone experience in the virtual reality world, you know where to go. PardoBrothers.com. Hit us up. But yeah, it's a two-man show at this moment, and we've been having lots of fun working on it.
Yeah. So how much of the VR development side did you guys really have under your belt before you started the I'm just kind of curious how you because I can't imagine, picking all that stuff up from the beginning if I didn't. Just kind of curious how you guys.
I mean, again, like Jonathan said, like we have sort of our unique disciplines that. But so I was definitely, I still sort of am an audio person first.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as working in game audio, I've been doing that since I started at Harmonix. But then I've really sort of, picked my battles with the rest of it, with coding and just general VR design. I started doing that sort of maybe, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. Just like making a little, just coding in general, doing C# in Unity. Sorry, my lights just randomly turned off.
Oh no, you're still fine.
Alexa, light on.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Nice.
But I've really only had the interest in working on any project outside of audio for stuff that me and my brother have been working on. So I learned through projects. So a lot of the skills, if you want to call them skills, I'm definitely a noob when it comes to eng stuff. So don't call me an engineer ever. But like that experience has really only just been because of the stuff that me and Jonathan work on together. He's like, I want to do a VR game that has this awesome meditative interaction where you're, choosing stems and you're getting to make your own soundtrack, and I'm like, I want to make that. How can I make that? Let me figure it out, and we'll do it together. And then the same thing happened with saxophone. So it's been a learning experience, and it's one of the reasons why we're being patient with it is because I need patience. I need a little bit of time to learn some new things.
I think that there's also a lot of we've been extremely cautious around bringing on other people to the team because Steve and I are so aligned on what the vision of this is, even as it varies, as it deviates, as Steve will bring up some nonsense narrative idea. And I'm just at first, just kind of nodding, okay, that sounds like a bad idea. And then the more we talk about it, I'm just completely bought in. And I think, it's because we're brothers. We just we have very similar brains. Our backgrounds are almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
And so we both think alike and think the same things are funny and think the same things are unique and cool about this. That even the people that we've talked to that are excited about this, that have offered to support this, I just, we're cautious because we just don't want to make this something that it's not. We want this to be a very specific type of experience, something that's showcasing a really unique interaction, something that's really musical and focused on the music more than the game, something that does have a gameplay mechanic that is worthy of being called a gameplay mechanic, which is hard to do when you want to make it seemingly simple. And then also something that has depth. And that's the thing that we've most recently really jumped onto and been excited about is the depth of the narrative, the depth of the instrument. Just like you guys are saying, can you play different instruments? That's something we talk about all the time. Can you just have a store that you swap out your alto for a Barry and the sounds change and the visuals change? even like, beautiful visuals that like come out of the saxophone when you hit peak mode, that really allow you to utilize VR and the space that you're in. Like, I've never been able to play a saxophone and have hearts pop out of the horn, but now I can. I've never been able to play saxophone and cause people to levitate in the crowd, but now I can. So like, it's so easy for us to be like, that sounds funny and dumb, let's try it. And then Steve tries it, and then the next day we have a build with it, and we're like, great, what's the next thing? So, in terms of our team, I'm really happy with it being the two of us. And once we start to get a polished version of it, that's when we'll start to grow a bit.
Anything that hasn't like out the gate was garbage, and then you're like, okay, let's try it, and then it ended up garbage. Like, is anything, or has it all been kind of been
what
like
hasn't worked? Yeah.
What hasn't worked? What has been a dumpster fire so far?
Steve, has anything not worked?
I'm having a hard time with that.
I kind of want to say every time we've added something,
we had those like
it's worked.
The sound effects.
That's what's great. No, that's what's great, because the game is not the game. I know the game is serious. You guys are serious about it and taking it serious, but at its heart, you're like, this is. We acknowledge that this is fun and
music is play.
So you can kind of get away with almost anything, and I think people will kind of be like, okay.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Steve had one thing.
Steve had one thing. Sorry, I thought.
Well, and I this isn't like, it more just like a realization that like we were really interested in making the narrative a really big part of it. Massaging that to make it something that's entertaining and successful has definitely taken on iteration. One of those things being like, how long are players willing to just sit there and listen to someone gab at you? So initially in the build you play, Damon, the sort of like narrative portion was probably a little long-winded. So we've just been since then just like tightening it up like crazy. So there's still a lot. Obviously, it's a narrative-based game. There's a lot of that, but like what the comedy is, like comedic timing and just precise information delivery to convey what's happening in the narrative, while also it being not too long of a monologue, right? Because you can't interact with them; it's just people monologuing at you. So just like that soup of stuff that we want with the narrative game has definitely taken.
And I would imagine for you guys, I mean, the passion that you guys speak about the project, I think comes through like very evidently. It sounds like you guys have such a strong vision of what you kind of see this and feel this project being. And so I would imagine, you want to take what's in your head and what you're imagining, that feeling, and finding a way to kind of transfer that to other people. And that's probably easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what we think is funny on paper is different than what is funny in VR. And even for us, though we write something down, we're like, that's hilarious, let's put it in the game. And then we put it in the game. I think that we get a different context when we're in that world and we have somebody talking at us for even 30 seconds. It feels like an eternity in VR. Like I'm just looking at somebody talk to me for 30 seconds. And that doesn't work. And especially when you have a saxophone in your hands, you're just like, why am I listening? I just want to play this. So that is absolutely, I mean, we look to some great companies out there, Alchemy Labs and Squanch and all the folks that have made some really good, funny VR games. You look at them, and if you really analyze what's happening in the scene, it is very rare that somebody talks to you without you doing something for more than 10 seconds. You will always have something that you can do. There's something in front of you that you can grab. There's something that you can do to cut them off to move on to the next thing. So that's the trial and error stuff that you figure out as you're working on this type of game.
No, that's really interesting, because one thing I don't hear from a lot of people when I'm talking about kind of VR development, like I know people are concerned about motion sickness and people getting sick from movement, but I think it's interesting, the idea that there's also a form of sickness that you get when you're still, just kind of sitting in that environment. That's something that it needs to be kind of a mix of moving but not
Well,
too much
just
movement or
stand up for 4 TV commercials in a row.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the third one, you're like, oh man, I want to sit down. This is I know there's definitely like that. And I think some ported games that got ported early on, it would be like just tons of talking and there's no way to skip it. And,
there's a specific cadence to VR that works.
That's
well.
Interesting. I didn't think about that.
There was a thread on Twitter about loading screens and how, like, at least on a console, when you're staring at a screen, you can like pick up your phone and do something. But in VR, you're stuck. Like, what am I going to do? So that's another one of those things that we actually quite organically built into our game, is that there's no loading screens. So just trying to
nice.
Saxophone VR, no loading screens.
Man, this is the Half-Life Alex of saxophone game already.
I'm just gonna write that down real quick.
The Beat Saber of the Super Mario Brothers of saxophone games. I mean, just make a whole poster, and that's all it is.
Yeah.
Well,
correct.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, I think the passion speaks for itself. I think it's super cool that you guys as brothers are working on this project together. And I think it's amazing that you're able to find a project I mean, you said are you in California still, or Jonathan?
Nashville. Jonathan's in Boston.
In Boston. Okay. So you're in Boston. So you guys are far away from each other, yet still able to work on this project so much. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a passion project, or at least that's what it started as for us. We were just saying, this is so funny. This is so us. We have to make it. And yeah, I mean, when we started working on this, we both lived in Boston. And since he's moved to Nashville, it hasn't really broken our strides here. If anything, we've had to be more purposeful about meeting up and checking in on, the tasks that we have on our plate to get this thing done. So it's been great for us as brothers to just like, hey, how's the family? Hey, how's your new dog situation? Oh, it doesn't sound that great. Okay, anyways, saxophone.
Isn't it, like, a side note, but isn't it so crazy that with like all the pandemic and all that kind of stuff, how distances in some ways feel like they've got shrunk a little bit? Like at least when it comes to me working with people that are farther away or getting in touch with family, I know video conferencing and all of that existed pre-COVID. But for some reason, because now you're interacting with more and more people in your own city via those methods, somehow it's become even more accessible to work with people from afar. So I don't know. I think that's cool.
I've been working remotely since moving to Nashville, and that was one of those things that blew me away. Just like, I can work with anybody from anywhere in the world all day long.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's just like, wait, why did we move to Nashville? No, because like you want to play music, people. Oh yeah, right. Of course I would. But it's been beautiful to like get to work with Jonathan, and half a country away, and it feel like we're just doing the same thing we've always been doing with game development. It's awesome.
Well, I know Zane, he's our other co-host. He really wanted to be on the call, but because he's a musician himself, so it would have been really interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, but he kind of made the same kind of. He used to be in Chicago here, where I am, and he made the move with his family a few months to go out to California because he wants to do more music related stuff in LA. So yeah, but it's. So I get it, like in terms of moving to the location and everything. But yeah, it's crazy how much you're able to do from anywhere now. So
I had one question. So let's say we go off in the future, the games come out, and of course some YouTuber, some big YouTube stars, they'll be probably just like Beat Saber. They're playing it. It's great. It's funny. And I hate that question when people, you're working on something that's not out, and that's not my question. You're working on something that's out. It's out. What is the thing how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel like more people get into playing saxophone? Which I know Harmonix and Rockband, more kids got into playing guitar, and singing, and playing drums. Because my wife doesn't play drums, but she can play a badass electronic drum set because of Rock's band, because she played. I mean, we didn't have kids, so she played hours and hours and hours and hours. I went and bought the $400 amazing Rock Band drum set.
Yeah.
So I think that more kids got into music because of that. And is that any motivation, or is that any forethought of like, people are going to be like, I played the virtual version, now I want to play the real thing?
Can I field that one? Because that's a fun one to answer. I would say absolutely we don't care what anyone else thinks about this game, and we're just making it for ourselves. But also absolutely we are hyper excited about like the authenticity of this thing and how it basically is like you're playing a pentatonic scale on the saxophone with an octave key and a bunch of other crazy things that make it feel real. But you know, and we've gotten some awesome approval on that assumption from like great saxophone players like Jeff Coffin and David Binney, a few others that like are some of my heroes. Like we've been able to show them this thing and be like, that's
amazing.
That's cool.
That's cool.
That
That's
must be,
how you know.
yeah.
Because everything that comes out, if the people that do it don't or turned off by it, that's a big red flag. And if the people that are actually out there doing it, that's a big
these are guys that like
bright
don't
shining
care.
lights.
They don't care about VR at all.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they were able to experience and be like, oh yeah, this is crazy. This never exists. So they have those folks in particular have little cameos in even the demo version of our game.
That's awesome.
And if we, obviously we'd like to sort of fully feature them.
That's cool.
But like, I don't know, like, yeah, I think that if kids get into saxophone, that's kind of a hilarious side effect of what this thing is. But we're keeping
saxophone sales are just.
You're welcome, Adolf.
At the very, very least, I hope that there are more videos like some of the ones I saw. I think it was Jonathan's Twitter when I was adding you guys, but I saw like some awesome videos of you playing the game like in a cafe.
Yeah. That actually wasn't me. That was somebody that walked up and just tried it.
Oh man!
I think the video you're talking about is the guy that was playing it and starts leaning back.
Yeah, that's the one.
He must have been like some yogi dude because he literally leaned back to the point where he was laying on the floor and just playing the saxophone. People all walking by, just like, what is happening?
Going on?
So at the very least, if we get some more videos like that, I think the game's a success.
Mission accomplished. Basically.
Also, I made a mode called, it's like a performance kind of mode where the Quest has like an eighth inch jack. In it, so you can plug it in and like plug it into an amp, and you can bring it to your gig and play saxophone.
That was one of my questions. Yeah, public performance.
You can. Yeah, I have a mode specifically for that. So
that's amazing.
I've been doing a lot of videos on Instagram, putting it through my pedal board. It's awesome. It's so stupid awesome.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing. Is like this is an instrument. Like this is. There's a lot of people out there that have made unique virtual interactions for virtual instruments. There's even like Imogen Heap has those gloves where she can like make crazy cool music sounds, and she's actually worked with the Wave, the Wave VR, and now it's just Wave, folks that do the live VR concerts, and using those gloves to make music. And so this is just another, and I really do think that we should call it an instrument. It is a unique instrument because it's a unique input that makes music, and change out the samples to make it, it doesn't need to be a saxophone. It can be any sound. But the input it almost feels analog in the way that you have control over so many different things, over scoops, over different, like the varied notes that you can go up and down. It actually does give you a lot of control within a very small amount of button schemes. So we look at it as a game first and something that people can buy and play and try out and laugh at and say that was cool. But also, there's this whole other side to it that is like, we think this is a very unique and legitimate interaction that people that understand what's happening are going to go crazy over.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It's those fundamentals that I think, like, if you have if the underlying system that the interaction is fun and unique and interesting, then I think whatever you're able to layer on top of it will just be gravy to the. So
those 2016 VR games, like say Super Hot, like in Punch, and it kind of feels like a gun, right? Mm-hmm. So let's make a game where, and I love Super Hot. But let's make a game where you can punch, it's room scale, and it feels like a gun. And it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And everything else kind of worked out. I think a lot of people kind of said, well, what does this immediately feel like? And man, that feel, I didn't even realize it. But then when we were there and you showed us, and it was just like, yeah, that's cool. That makes sense.
I mean, I think Super
It
Hot is
clicks.
a perfect example of
Yeah.
it's that's one of the most unique experiences that it started as a non-VR game, as a console PC game. And I think it had some acclaim, but it didn't have nearly as much as it did when they ported to VR.
No, not at all.
And the real reason was that interaction in VR was so much better than you could control with a mouse and keyboard or controller.
Yep.
Because you felt like you were in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And
it's an analog feel, similar to kind of what you guys are. It literally you're moving time according to your body in a way that feels so much more granular in VR than it would.
Yeah. And Saxophone would not work on console. So before you even ask, we're not porting it to console.
PSVR, PS5, VR,
PS5,
PSVR 2. No way.
Awesome.
Hey guys, I do have to split.
Yeah. No, that's
My
what
family's pulling
I
me
was
away.
literally just about to end it now here at the 1
Okay,
hour mark. So yeah, perfect timing. Thank you both for joining us again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
We're big fans, and we're very much excited about anything you guys are putting out. And
Real quick before we just end it, for people out there that are interested in following what you guys are doing and to kind of follow up on when the game is announced, how should people follow the project?
Yep, you can follow Steve and I on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at First Chair Sax, and Steve's at Steve Pardo. You can also check out thepardobrothers.com and saxophonevr.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, and we wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to play it.
We'll keep in touch. We'll send you guys a bill whenever it's public. We'll let you guys know.
Really appreciate it.
look forward
Take
to it.
care.
Thank you so
Awesome,
much,
guys.
guys.
Peace.
Thank you.
Take